Welcome back to another episode of the Media Pass. I'm your host, Alex, with my other host, Matt. Matt, how you doing?
I am phenomenal. Feeling that high coming off of our best performing episode in our very short history.
Yeah, I know. What a feeling. That thing popped a little bit. Now I understand why like BuzzFeed built their entire business model off of just top 10 lists, because it works apparently. So now we're going to sell out completely and make our entire podcast top 10 lists.
Just kidding. Top 10
we're not going to be doing that. We have a top 14 today. We're going to do a couple of quick Q&As. We got some questions from a couple of viewers, so we're going to hit those real quick. But after that, we're going to be doing a redraft of the 2020 NBA draft. I think this is a good, fair time to be doing a redraft of that one. I think, what is it, like 2 or 3 years? 3 years is kind of like, after 3 years, you get a good vibe from most players. I think we're at the point now where a lot of these guys, we're seeing what they're capable of. So we're going to be getting into that. But first, Matt, you want to go ahead and hit those questions real quick?
Yeah. So last episode, me and Alex actually recorded it twice. First time was lost to, the, different dimension, wherever those go. Yeah. So we had to re-record, and at the end of it, we did a little fun thing to test who's really listening, and we said, go ahead and send in a question. So yeah, we got a couple questions here. One was from a YouTube comment from @MoEatsCurry. Okay. He said, LFAO, that's crazy the recording was gone. Listen till the end. Great video, guys, and Kobe White is the GO. Agree that a video should be made about big man. Other than this archetype, potentially, what is your favorite archetype of NBA player? So I'm guessing he means this in like a subjective way, not like what the best player archetype is. But go ahead, Alex.
No, you go first.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like this is pretty normy, like in our community, to have this as your favorite archetype, but I can't help myself. I love like the defense first, like wing forward who can't shoot. You're smiling. I feel like is that yours too?
No, mine is the defense first wing forward that can shoot. Okay.
See, that would be too easy, man. Those guys are too good to like. How could you root for a guy like that? They have everything, I
would actually say, like, to be more specific, mine is the defense first forward that can shoot off of the catch and will always show flashes of like on ball creation, but never actually reaches the point where that's like practical. That's like my favorite. Murphy. Yeah, like Trey Murphy is a good example. Okay. Jaden McDaniels is a good example who we're going to be I'm assuming we're going to be talking about him today. I don't know where you have him in the redraft. You may not have him in the top 14, so we'll see. But yeah, that's probably my favorite.
Cool. I like that. Yeah, mine, like, so example for me would be like Jared Vanderbilt. I love him. I love, like, because they have to end up playing with such like a high motor to make up for like not being able to shoot. It's just, I don't know. It's what I like, man. I can't help it. The other question came in from N Boardz on Twitter. He said, "Hey, Alex, Hoops, and Matt Issa 15. Follow us on Twitter, by the way, if you're not already. After watching the last episode of the pod, you said to DM you if you had a question for the next episode's pod. Since I'm not paying Elon, my questions for the podcast is in the tweet below. What are your thoughts on the OG for RJ and IQ trade? Similar to IQ, who are some young players who could use a change of scenery to reach their full potential?"
I think you and I might have we either had super different opinions on this trade or like slightly different opinions. But for me, I kind of fall into the camp that's like, it seems like it's going to end up being a win-win. Maybe not like immediately, but down the road. That being said, it kind of already looks like a win-win. Obviously, the Knicks lost last night, so like everyone's going to look at that and they're going to be like, "Oh, this was a terrible trade. Like, they couldn't even beat the Mavericks without Luka." It's like, whatever. Like, they won 4 games straight after they made the trade, and like more importantly, you could see how much OG like immediately addressed a lot of their concerns. And, you know, I talked about it in the OG video that I did. In the OG video I did, like, I don't think people realize just how bad New York's defense was. It was bottom 10 in the league. It was one of the worst defenses in the NBA. They were below average any way you cut it. And I mean, you know, they got OG and they're immediately a top 10 defense. We'll see if it holds, but I mean, it helped them out a ton. And then from Toronto's perspective, it's not like they have a ton of aspirations for winning right now. You might as well get Emmanuel Quickley, who's a great piece to have, like, I guess, to build around going forward. I don't know if you necessarily build around Emmanuel Quickley, but if their like goal is to build around Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley's a great player to have to build around with him. And I also think he has more upside than he kind of gets.
We'll talk about
for,
that.
But yeah, we'll definitely get into that. And then RJ, you know, we'll see what happens. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I'm okay. So I'd say beginning of the trade, I was like, okay, kind of see like Quickley and OG is like the same tier of player. And then you get RJ on top of that. So I was like, okay, maybe Toronto won this a little bit. But the more I look at it, it's like, yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think it's a win-win. I think the big part of it, and I'm actually writing about this today with the Knicks side of things, is, you know, this offseason they went and got Dante DiVincenzo. And it's like, DiVincenzo is not in any world like as good of a basketball player as Emmanuel Quickley, you know, right now or in the future or whatever. But like he can do the things that they needed Quickley to do alongside Brunson for a much cheaper price than Quickley would have cost them. So they're like, okay, cool, we have this. And then you have Grimes, who's just like a funny player because like the theory of him is like awesome. But then in practice, it's like, wait, why is he not as good as he's supposed to be? Different story for a different podcast. But so like, okay, we have Quickley who's like kind of becoming redundant now. Why don't we move him for a better fitting piece? Even if Quickley has a higher ceiling, OG unlocks more for this team because we need his size. We need his on-ball defense. We need his shooting, right? So I like it for both teams. I think people need to get over this. Like, I've never been able to like properly describe this in a tweet, but I think like a lot of Twitter people think like that certain front offices are just like bumbling idiots. And the reality is, like, they're probably better to this than, like, you and me. That's why we make podcasts and celebrate over getting, like, almost 1,000 listeners. And they, like, you know, make millions of dollars.
Right.
But, yeah, so they're not bumbling idiots. They know what they're doing. And I think more times than not, you do get, like, a win-win type deal. But the other part of that question, actually, so I don't want to give up too much because I think one of the guys is going to be talked about today. I think Josh Green kind of falls under this category of guy who could probably use a change of scenery. One guy me and you are really high on, AJ Griffin. He's kind of been buried in the bench of Atlanta this year for some reason. I think he's awesome.
Yeah,
well, I had one more.
I agree with that.
You go ahead. I'll try to think, but I had one more. Can't remember it now.
This is one of those where, like, you know, Jonathan Kuminga's one that I don't necessarily know if I agree. You know, he probably would be better than he is right now if he was just given free reign to like explore his game fully. There's another guy who we're going to talk about today that I think would look a lot different now if he was, you know, a full-time starter. Onyeka Okongwu, spoiler alert. But I mean, off the top of my head, those are really the only guys I can think about, and I'm sure there's a billion examples. But just quick gut check. Those are some of the guys that pop out.
Yeah. Oh, I had one, dude. It's going to kill me. It's really going to kill me. I'm going to like I'm sorry in advance. I'm going to cut you off in the middle of the podcast probably to fire it out. But
oh, okay. Well, that's fine. You know, do what you got to do. I don't blame you.
All right.
So let's get into this redraft of the 2020 NBA draft. I don't want to go first. So I'm going to let you go first.
All right. Just real quick, guys, what we're going to do here is we're going to repick the first 14 picks. You know, I'm going to pick first, apparently. Alex is going to go second. Then I'm going to go third. He's going to go fourth. I'm going to go fifth. We'll name who was originally picked in this spot. And then after the pick was made, we can name where they were originally picked. But so I have the first pick. I don't
real quick,
think
one thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how like well versed in drafting you are, but I want to throw out there that like I'm an NBA person, so my perception and like my knowledge of these guys extends to like what I learn about them immediately prior to the draft and then once they're in the NBA. So I did not like scout these players while they were in college, while they were in high school. So, I'm sure there's going to be some draft people who listen to this and they're like, oh my gosh, like these guys could not be more wrong. And to those listeners, I'm sorry. This may just not be the episode for you, but I hope you still listen anyways. But I just wanted to throw that out there because, I'm basing all of my opinions off of what they've shown in the NBA so far with the benefit of retrospect and hindsight. But, if you scouted a lot of these players while they were in high school and college, I'm sure your redraft would look vastly different.
Oh, yeah. We're not trying to poo-poo on anyone's original assessments. It's so easy to do things after the fact in hindsight. Right. We're just trying to look at like where they are now. I think, they're in their 4th season now. So there's still like we've seen like Lauri Markkanen, right? We've seen like late bloomers and stuff. So there's no doubt they'll be wrong here about some of these guys. But it's just fun to kind of look back and be like, okay, so these were actually the better players. It's just fun. It's a fun thing to do. It's kind of like my rant last episode. It's cool to do this stuff. But yeah, anyways, first overall pick went to the Minnesota Timberwolves. They drafted Anthony Edwards. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's kind of a no-brainer here that they would do the same thing. Right? You there?
Okay. Yeah, I wanted you to go first because I didn't want like my Timberwolves bias to show.
Okay.
But I also would have had Anthony Edwards number 1.
I think the big difference between him and Haliburton is the athleticism, like the physical athleticism. And I just trust like in the playoffs, like athleticism is usually more scheme proof than like IQ, I would say. Like not that Anthony Edwards is not a high IQ player, not that Haliburton is like a low athleticism player, but like, there's clearly like Edwards has the advantage in athleticism and it's just hard to scheme like speed, or power. And Edwards is battle tested. We've seen him in the playoffs before. So yeah, I'll go with Ant, pretty clear number 1 guy.
So I agree with you. If we're kind of comparing him and Tyrese, who real quick, I will say I have Tyrese at 2. Anthony Edwards he's a year and a half younger than Tyrese Haliburton, and like that athleticism and stuff, like that's just natural stuff that was already there. And then you throw the basketball ability on top of it. It's like he kind of has just more like perceived upside. That's not to say Tyrese doesn't have still, plenty of upside and potential to be extracted. It's just Anthony Edwards is so early on in his career that it's like, he's, they're technically at the same stages of their careers in terms of NBA experience. But Anthony Edwards is just younger. There's a lot of stuff that's probably untapped there. There's like the perceived defensive upside. He's shown he has the ability to be a quietly very good weak side rim protector. When he's, the problem is when he's locked in is something that gets said a lot about him. Really consistency is the thing holding him back from being an elite defender and being just like, every now and then he's a very, very good defender. That being said, Tyrese Haliburton is who I would have number 2. Tyrese Haliburton, any positives you can say about Anthony Edwards defensively, you cannot say about Tyrese Haliburton defensively. Tyrese Haliburton does the thing that a lot of guards do where like, you can play in some passing lanes sometimes, but defense is not going to be something that's going to boost Haliburton's draft stock. His development though has been insane. I think the difference between a team drafting Ant or Tyrese number 1 overall in a redraft would kind of be dependent on like the need. Do you need more of like the cherry on top to complete a roster that's already like kind of set up and trying to contend, and you just need like the scorer? If that's the case, you probably go Anthony Edwards. But if you need a team to build your whole identity, or a guy to build your whole identity around, who can brunt the scoring load and do all the playmaking and have the ball in his hands, 95% of the time, then you probably go Tyrese Haliburton. Regardless, I think these are 2 guys where you really can't go wrong either way. whichever player you ended up drafting out of these two, as a front office, you're probably walking away and being pretty happy with what you got.
Agreed. Haliburton was selected number 12 by the Sacramento Kings. So in this redraft, he would go number 2 to the Golden State Warriors, who originally selected a fellow named James Wiseman. I don't know how they feel about that pick right now. So that takes us to number 3. Yeah, I don't know, man. Different pod. That's a different pod. Number 3. This is a guy who you've championed his cause pretty heavily. I think injuries have kind of, made us forget some of his brilliance. I think recency bias has kind of made us forget some of his brilliance. But I'm going to go at number 3 here with LaMelo Ball. He looked so good and so in control when he was healthy this year before he literally got, who fell on him on Orlando? Do you remember that? Somebody literally just,
Paolo.
Yeah, and that's not the dude you want falling on you, no matter what your build is.
Right.
So he fell on him. He's been out since then, but he just looks like he's so in control. He's so fast. He's such a good shooter, such a great decision maker. I hate to keep doing this. I think it's becoming a bit on the podcast, but look, I think some people after this season might say oh man, you want Tyrese Maxey at number 3, but LaMelo's just I trust him as a number 1 so much more. If you switched Maxey and LaMelo right now, if you put LaMelo on Philly, I'd call them a contender, an inner circle contender right now with no moves, no other moves. That's how much I trust LaMelo's playmaking, his decision making, his ability to kind of run an offense. But yeah. And he's also huge. He's Cleaning the Glass has him listed at 6'8". Did you know that?
Yeah,
I don't think he's 6'8".
It's insane that he's that big.
He's huge. And so even if he's a bad defender, being a bad defender at 6'8" is completely different than being a bad defender at 6'1", So
it's a lot harder to target somebody who's 6'8" than it is to target
look
somebody
at what's his name? Sam Hauser.
Yeah.
People don't target that dude. On ball they don't. Michael Porter Jr. You target him off ball. That's a different thing, but
right.
Yeah, and funny enough, he was actually selected 3rd overall by the Charlotte Hornets, so that wouldn't change. Good decision there by the Mitch Kupchak era of decision making. But yeah, we got it 4, man.
So at number 4, it sounds like we probably had the same pick at number 4. I went with Tyrese Maxey.
I didn't do it.
Ooh. Well, I'll plead my case for Tyrese Maxey. But I am curious who you had at number 4. I think that's our first one where we've been different. I went with Tyrese Maxey. He's a Kentucky guard, and those are always a safe bet pretty much in every draft, it seems like. A recent exception being Ty Washington, another guy who you could say if he had better opportunity, he'd look a lot different now. But again, another pod for another day. This year is obviously the year that Tyrese Maxey's put it all together. And I still think he's got a lot of room to grow. We talked about it on the last pod in the combo guard discussion. He's very, very good. No one's going to say otherwise, but he is not a perfect player yet. And he can eventually be way better than he is now. He's not quite the playmaker that 2 and 3 in our redraft so far. Those guys are definitely above him in that regard by a significant margin. It's not to say Maxey hasn't improved, but if you're talking about the difference between a number 1 and a number 2, he's just somebody that I think Maxey will be a number 2 for his career, simply because I don't think his playmaking is really ever going to be enough to kind of make him that number 1. His scoring, he could end up easily being a 27, 28, 20. Who knows? The points per game are relatively arbitrary. But then you also look at the size limitations defensively. That's something that's going to hold him back. Like we just said, it's a lot harder to target a 6'8" guy than it is to target a 6'1" guy. And Tyrese Maxey, unfortunately, is the latter in that situation. It's not to say he doesn't try. That's not to say he doesn't give good effort. He does. But there's just inherent things that he won't be able to do that a guy who's 6'8" or 6'5", any number there would be able to do. It's not to say I'm low on him. I mean, taking him 4th overall, he was drafted 21. So he had he was definitely one of the biggest jumpers in terms of draft spot in my personal picks. But all that being said, I'm curious who you had at number 4.
Yeah. Real quick, just get that out of the way. The Chicago Bulls had the 4th overall pick. They actually selected Patrick Williams, who we may or may not talk about a little bit later on. But so I don't even have Maxey at 5 on my board. I have him at 6.
Ooh.
Yeah, I have Maxey at 6. I know I'm going to get it from Dan.
Yeah.
He's going to give it to me.
I tried.
But so it's funny. Like I was like, yeah, man, those recency bias guys, like they love them some Tyrese Maxey. But my number 4 guy is actually Emmanuel Quickley. So I couldn't even get more recency bias than that. But okay, so here's my case. So Quickley's like the perfect like outline of Quickley, you know, with that speedy, quick hitting actions, the handoffs, the catch and shoot, movement shooting, all that stuff, right? That's like he can probably mime what Maxey does, like 95%, right? But the thing is, like, he's such a better defender. Like, he's longer, he's bigger, he gets in the passing lanes. Like, I don't know, like, if he's like your weakest defender on the floor, like, you have like a really, really, like, he was able to make lineups with him and Brunson tenable. You know what I mean? Like, Maxey couldn't do that. And I know that's like a one team construct and you can't play that game with these things, but like, just in general, I like the fact that you get like 95% of what Maxey does on offense, and then you get like, you know, twice, whatever, if we're going to put a number on it, what Maxey does on defense. So that's why I had him at 4. Maxey Quickley was originally selected at 25th by the OKC Thunder. So I'm picking him 5th, right? On the Cleveland Cavaliers pick, which was originally Isaac Okoro, who we might be talking about down the road. So Quickley's 5. So my number 5 guy is who I think you have at 6. And I have this guy over Maxey.
Let's hear it.
Did you pick Desmond Bane?
At 5?
Yeah. Well, no, so it's Desmond Bane who you're going to pick next.
Yes.
With the 6th pick. Okay. So yeah. So I have Bane over Maxey.
Oh, because you had Maxey at 5.
I had Maxey at 6. Okay. So first,
I'm confused.
I was just telling you what my board looks like. So first, I selected Ant. You selected Tyrese Haliburton. All these goddamn Tyreses. Then I selected LaMelo Ball. And then you selected Tyrese Maxey, who I have lower on, but I have 2 guys over him. One of them I used my 5th overall pick on, which is Emmanuel Quickley.
Okay.
The other one, I thought you were going to use your 6th overall pick. I'm right, because we're really good friends, even though you didn't tell me that you went to Louisville. But yeah, Desmond Bane. Right. I'm higher on Desmond Bane than I am Tyrese Maxey.
I see that this is a situation where Desmond Bane and Tyrese Maxey were very tough for me. Mm-hmm. I was like, I could get very high on Desmond Bane. So some of my justification for having him at number 5, you know, he's on the quote unquote older side compared to a lot of the guys that we're talking about here. There's a lot to be said for some of the known about him. You definitely are drafting a guy who may have less perceived upside, whatever. That being said, this guy is on pace to be not just one of the best shooters in the NBA. He's on pace to be one of the best shooters ever in NBA history. Like, that's ridiculous. It felt almost impossible to not have him top 5. He's just, plus the on-ball juice that he's shown and developed over the course of his career so far. It's like, how can you not love that? You're getting one of the greatest shooters in the league right now, potentially one of the greatest shooters ever, and then he can also occasionally just run your offense. You know, he's not necessarily ever going to be I don't necessarily see him ever being a primary ball handler and offensive facilitator, but, you know, he can run pick and rolls, he makes the extra pass, he can pass out of drives. That's plenty. He can do that at a very high level because his scoring ability has progressed to the point that is somewhat of a threat to have an impact on defenses. And there's a lot to be said for that out of a number 2. Guys who can do that are going to have incredible careers. Plus the other stuff just off ball that Desmond Bane has shown that he can do. It's like, well, this is a fantastic player. And he's, you know, I'm not great at evaluating guard defense, but I think Desmond Bane is at minimum a fine defender. I think sometimes he's a very good defender. He's not playing next to Jaren Jackson Jr. Sometimes defensive strategies are going to look different depending on who you have around you, because schematically some defenses are just going to operate in a way that they're conceding certain things because they know it can lead to an outcome that's favorable. It can create defensive plays, steals, blocks, et cetera, et cetera. So Desmond Bane, there are some times that you can say like, oh, he got caught up on this screen here and, didn't do enough. It's like, well, actually, he's funneling them towards Jaren Jackson Jr., who they want to funnel things through. It's like, okay, how much of it is that? Defense is not something that you could look at with Desmond Bane and be like, oh, he shouldn't be this high because of defense, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, he's a fine defender. There's really not a whole lot like terrible you can say about Desmond Bane defensively. I could honestly see him going 4th overall. He's just the inherent value of a guy probably going to end up being one of the greatest shooters ever. That's enough already to just be like, yeah, of course we're going to take this guy. Like if you told someone that whenever Klay Thompson got drafted, if you could go back and tell them, hey, he's going to be one of the best shooters ever, he's going to get drafted insanely high. I think it's the same exact situation for Desmond Bane. And I would say Desmond Bane is probably going to be a better on-ball player than Klay Thompson. And he already is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, 1,000. How about I give you 2 stats? Ready?
Let's hear it.
So between Bane and Maxey, who would you think has both the higher scoring volume and efficiency this year?
Between Bane and Maxey?
Yeah.
I looked at it before the podcast, so I know the answer.
Okay. So you know the answer is Desmond Bane.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And so think about that, though. Maxey's playing in like this perfect ecosystem, Nick Nurse offense that just caters to him so well. He's playing next to Joel freaking Embiid, one of the best players on the planet, one of like the most gravity-sucking human beings on Earth. I shouldn't have said it like that, but you get what I'm saying, right? A guy who attracts a lot of
so aggressively.
A guy who attracts a lot of attention from defenses, okay? And yet Bane, who's no Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson's in and out of the lineup, Marcus Smart's now like Dunzo for the foreseeable future, just nothing going there. There's been like a season in hell, and he is scoring at a higher volume and a higher efficiency. Here's another stat. Ready? So one number metrics, the thing they're really good at is calculating how good a player is in their specific role. Okay, so Maxey's role on the Philadelphia 76ers is to be like Embiid's partner in crime, his number 2, his Robin, right? And then like kind of just not get killed on defense, right? By doing that, he's in the, 95th percentile in EPM, okay? Bane's role is to be a credible defender, okay? He's usually not the worst defender on the floor, and then also like just completely like buoy this offense, like be everything for this offense. He's still in the 90th percentile. He's right behind Maxey. And like, again, we've seen Bane with the defense thing. We've seen him play like 5 playoff series already. Never once has there been like a Twitter thread about how Desmond Bane got the Memphis Grizzlies killed last night with his defense. Like, he's solid and he's huge. Have you seen this guy's bicep? He has the best biceps.
He's got the SpongeBob arms from that one episode where he goes to the beach and he's lifting weights.
You know, he doesn't work out. Did you listen to the JJ Redick pod when he was like, "Yeah, I don't really lift weights"? I'm like, "How? What?"
I don't believe that.
No, I swear, I was like, I never really lifted weights. I'm like, come on, man. Like, how I would die for something. I would die for those arms, man. Not die because I wouldn't get to enjoy this. I would kill for those arms. Right. That's what I would say.
That's better. Murder is better than dying.
Yeah. So yeah, Bane went 30th. He was originally selected by the Boston Celtics. Got traded to the Memphis Grizzlies, but Alex is taking him 6th. Which was the Atlanta Hawks pick. They had Onyeka Okongwu. Imagine Bane and Trae Young together. That would have been something. So, with my number 7 pick, I know you set this up, man, so I got to draft both of the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm going to go with Jaden McDaniels. So, 7th overall, the Detroit Pistons had that pick very famously. They selected Killian Hayes, who, respectfully, I do not think we're going to be talking too much about after this. Jaden McDaniels was selected 28th, originally by the Lakers, ended up with the Timberwolves. But yeah, he's He's probably the best defensive forward in the entire NBA. His offensive game just keeps expanding. His drive game has looked so good this year. His hand, it's kind of like what you talk about. He shows some flash, makes you think maybe one more year he's Paul George. But he's awesome. I have him at 7th because I don't think he will eventually become Paul George, but I do buy his catch and shoot shooting. I do buy his drive game, and I do think he is the best defensive forward in the NBA right now.
I agree. He's also kind of a situation where he gets drafted is something that I think would dictate a lot of what his outcome ends up being. With the Timberwolves, getting Anthony Edwards and having Cat, that's a situation where there just weren't enough shots to really see what was there for Jaden McDaniels for him to really expand his game. And despite that, he still managed to expand his game a significant amount. At this point, I'm starting to tailor my expectations a little bit on what he can kind of become as a scoring threat. It's one of those things where, like, when he's given the opportunity to do so, he shows the flashes. They're definitely there. Sometimes it's amazing. Sometimes it's like, that handle's pretty loose. But he's one of those forwards where there's a lot of damage that he can do off the catch and just like driving and attacking closeouts. But there are a few circumstances where I would be like, let's give Jaden McDaniels an ISO. It's just rarely ever going to happen because I think there are a good amount of limitations to his juice as an on-ball creator. And I don't mean that as a diss. He's, earlier on in his career, his rookie year, if he had been given an opportunity to just like go out there, go crazy, develop as much of that on-ball game as you can, experiment. We're going to make Jeremy Sohan your point guard, and we'll see what happens, and just take pull-up threes all day like they're doing with Wemby. Who knows what Jaden McDaniels could be? But that being said, I actually had him a little lower, but
really.
So I guess I should go ahead and say who my 8th pick is going to be. And I'm not going to say where I actually had this guy, but it was higher. Devin Vassell.
That's who I had.
Devin. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we're not, it's interesting because our 6 through 8 are not very far apart. And then at the end, we should go through and say what our total order was.
Okay.
But I have Devin Vassell at 8. I really like the development that he's shown. I was a little worried at first when he first came into the NBA, and then he started to kind of figure it out. And then, the third year was where we were like, whoa, he's like really, really good. Then he got hurt, put a damper on things. And then this year, I think he's been fantastic. They're letting him explore his game a lot more now, but they're also giving him structure. Honestly, it's kind of funny. They've given him more structure than Wemby, I think. They run a lot of plays for him, to come off pin downs and just shoot off the catch or curl, to drive. They get him a good amount of flare screens, which I love. He's just one of those guys who, like, if you put him in the spot and you let him get good rhythm looks, he's going to be able to do his thing because his game is just tailored to that. Plus you have the size aspect. I like his frame. I think he is really the perfect complement to Wemby. And the thing I've kind of equated it to, I know Devin Vassell gets kind of the Chris Middleton comp a lot. And, certain aspects, I definitely see that, but I think he scratches the same itch for Wemby that Chris Middleton does for Giannis. I think he has, like Chris Middleton, he has a decent amount of juice as like an on-ball creator, but it's not like he's not going to be your first scoring option, but it's a threat to where like the defense is like, okay, we're going to have to provide nail help for a Devin Vassell. Sometimes we're going to have to hedge screens, and that's going to leave a guy like Wemby open on a roll. I think that's circumstances where he will be perfectly fine. And it's like, okay, you can't just, let him get to his spot and get what he wants one-on-one, especially if he has like a mismatch on him. And that's going to create a lot of opportunities for Wemby, which is why I'm very high on their potential as running mates together. it's funny just how worried I was early on in his career. And like when the Spurs first drafted him, I was like, and obviously again, I don't know a ton about drafting. I don't know a ton about college players, but I was like, Devin Vassell, really? You're taking Devin Vassell? And now I'm like, shoot, team would be happy to have Devin Vassell. Most teams would love to have Devin Vassell right now. And it was funny. I have some friends who, they follow the NBA, but they're not like sickos like we are. But when Devin Vassell got that contract extension, they DM'd me and they were like, why did Devin Vassell get this much money? I'm like, Devin Vassell deserves this much money. I promise you. So I'm all about Devin Vassell.
Yeah, 100% with you. Taken at 8th, the Knicks had that pick. They selected Obi Toppin. Devin Vassell was selected. Where was he? Oh, not too far off. 11th by the Spurs.
Imagine if the Knicks had selected Devin Vassell.
Oh God. I don't know. I mean, you can't play that because like all these other things.
Would they have gotten Jalen Brunson? Yeah. Would they have gotten Julius Randle? Did they have Julius Randle? I don't think they did. They did? Okay.
I think that was his. Yeah, that was his first season there. I think something like that. He's been around for a while. He's been there for a long time. Okay, so I'm at 9. Okay, so guys, please, if you have any issues with the rest of these picks, because it's kind of a crapshoot from here. But if you have any issues, my Twitter at AlexHoops _ So yeah, please. It's just like, I don't know. It's pick your poison with all these guys. Really, kind of
for sure.
I think a lot of it's context specific. I don't know. It's just, yeah. Anyways, the number 9, the Washington Wizards have this pick. They got Deni Avdija. He was close for me as my 9th guy, but I actually ended up going with Josh Green. Yeah. I feel like you probably didn't even have. How close was Josh Green?
Even on my. I thought about it, and I ultimately decided against it.
He's not on your board? Your top 14? Okay. Let me sell you on Josh Green.
Let's hear it. I'm ready.
I think he's in, like, the listeners asked, like, who's somebody who could use a change of scenery. I think Josh Green is a guy who could use that change in scenery. So, like, I feel like as fans, we've gotten better about discussing offensive fit, but we don't do it enough with defense, especially when it comes to, like, non-big men players. And Josh Green, he plays basketball like he was shot out of a cannon. Right. And he's just so wild. Like, it's so funny when he gets rejected, like when a ball handler rejects a screen on him, because he looks so like crazy and out of place, because he'll be so proactive about like going around a screen that he looks silly. Like the the ball handler's like, yep, nope, sorry, see it going the other direction, buddy. But I think Josh Green could be like one of the best off-ball defenders in the NBA, like just playing the passing lanes, playing that chaser role, like, following guys around pin downs, making plays at the rim with his verticality.
Very underrated as just a vertical contester on shots.
And on Dallas, though, the problem is they don't have a true primary point of attack guy that they could trust the point of attack other than Derrick Jones Jr., but whenever he's on the court, their offense like completely craters. So it's like they put Josh Green in this role. They're like, we need you to be our on-ball specialist, our point of attack stopper. And it's not one that is suitable for him. Like, imagine Josh Green, instead of Dante DiVincenzo, got to play with OG Anunoby. You know what I mean? Have that sturdy force on ball. Like, imagine how differently we would think about him defensively. So there's that. And then on offense, that shot into the cannon thing, like, he attacks closeouts, man. Like no other. He is so fierce, so wild. Such a tenacious driver. And I think so there's a lot of like these wings forwards that are like kind of shaky, like all in the same tier. We'll probably talk about a couple more of them. I think I trust Josh Green's shot the most out of all of them, especially like looking at like some of his wide open shooting indicators over the last couple of years. So all that, I don't know, tells me that I think on most team contexts, like Josh Green like is a really phenomenal kind of like fourth starter player.
I like that pick. And he's someone that I had kind of on the precipice of getting here. But I will say we'll get to these picks eventually. My 13 and 14th picks are kind of throwing darts at the wall. Like,
all my picks are darts at this point, man.
It's like, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. I could be totally off, but that's kind of just the fun of it. So that was number 9 for you, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So for number 10, I'm going to take, and I'll be very interested to know at the end of the episode where you had him. I'm going to take Onyeka Okongwu. He's in a funny situation because I'm not mad at his original draft spot at all. But him, like, technically he fell in this redraft, but
he was originally selected 6th.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's like, he fell, but the guys I have him over, it kind of feels like, he jumped up, because in this redraft, it's like, oh, there's actually a lot of talent here. But I really value what he brings to the table, because all these guys we've talked about, we're definitely looking at it, except for Josh Green just now. You kind of took the defensive standpoint, which I appreciate. And like Jaden McDaniels, defense is kind of his calling card. Not to say he's a bad offensive player, but the defense is really the cherry on top with him. But with Onyeka Okongwu, I'm like, the defense that he provides, and I talked about it at the beginning of the episode, but he's another guy who you can look at. You say the situation he gets drafted to, he looks a lot different right now. That being said, I still don't think he's anywhere close to being as good as he's going to be. But what he brings to the table, I think, is something that is so incredibly hard for teams to get. Like, having a defensive anchor, particularly one as good as Onyeka Okongwu is, he shut down he's considered like the Giannis stopper. Giannis tends to just not play very good against him at all, and it's because Onyeka Okongwu is an amazing defender. And offensively is where I'm really like, we have not even scratched the surface of what he can do. He has been so hamstrung by context that I don't even know what he could potentially look like right now if he had more of a green light and was allowed to explore his game a little bit more. The passing has still managed to pop in such limited opportunities. Like, the reads that he's able to make and like his feel in the high post as a passer is something that's just so underrated about him to me. I wish he was a little freer to explore operating DHOs, his ability to pass off the short roll. He's fantastic at. And then another thing you look at, it's like, he's not. I don't want him taking a high volume of threes, but I did a video on him last year, and if I remember correctly, last year in the mid-range, short mid-range specifically, he shot 44%, which isn't, amazing. It's not terrible, but on those very short, like, baseline jumpers where, like, you can't quite just do a push shot, you kind of have to set up for a jump shot, he was making them at, like, enough of a clip that I'm like, you should be taking these, because this is something that you might actually be able to do. I know people did that same thing with Rob Williams. I think the difference is the volume with Rob Williams was so insanely small of like a sample size. People were buying way too much into it. But with Onyeka Okongwu last year, it's like he shot 46% for the mid-range on 145 attempts. It's like, you should probably explore that a little more, because you could probably develop that. And then, like, early on in his career, he took 39 overall mid-range shots his first year. It's like, you add that to your game as a rim running big man, being able to shoot off of like a short roll pass when teams are blitzing Trae Young, being able to force a defense to come off the baseline and contest you because they know you can shoot that mid-range shot. The amount of stuff that opens up for an offense is insane. Look at how much it did for Domantas Sabonis when he started to be a little bit more comfortable taking that mid-range shot off of a short roll. It's like, dude, Atlanta's offense is already going to be good off nature of having Trae freaking Young on their team. Now imagine if Onyeka Okongwu, instead of Clint Capella just being pretty much just a rim running threat, Onyeka Okongwu, he's shooting mid-ranges all of a sudden? Now we got Jalen Johnson making backdoor cuts because the defense pulls up off the baseline because they have to contest Onyeka Okongwu. Goodness gracious, that team looks insane. So I think he would be and still can be, but I think he would just be so much better if he was allowed that 30 minutes a night to just be free and develop just tons and tons of chemistry with Trae Young and the rest of the starters. I mean, I'm probably higher on Onyeka Okongwu than a lot of people are, but I love this kind of player. We were asked at the beginning of the episode what our favorite archetype of player is. Honestly, it might be this kind of player, the Onyeka Okongwu kind of Rob Williams types. Jalen Duren gets those kinds of comps a lot. I love this kind of player. I think they're so fun. They're so unique, and they're so valuable. It's so hard to get players like this.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you, dude. Not me like being aware of his presence in this draft. Just he's not on my board. He's not on my top 14.
Okay.
I had him like
Fair
right
enough.
on the outside. He's one of my honorable. The thing is, like, if we would have done this beginning of the season, I would have been like 100% everything you said. I'm like, yeah, give me all the. And I was like, because Atlanta kind of had like this 300 monster of like young guys who were like really underrated, who nobody was talking about, and it was like Jalen Johnson, Onyeka Okongwu, AJ Griffin, and Jalen Johnson's been everything that you could ask him to be. AJ Griffin, I don't understand why he doesn't get playing time. And maybe that's also the thing I should have with Onyeka Okongwu. But the thing is, like, he's in year 4, and I'm like still waiting on him to usurp Clayton Capella. His indicators don't he's not leaving like this massive footprint where the defense is just so much better when he's on the floor than when Clayton Capella is. It's not, I don't know. I've kind of tamed my expectations. If I knew he was going to develop into like Ivica Zubac, like I'd probably have him right around here, Like I trust that, the conventional drop big man, like you could trust him to anchor that defense, punish mismatches in the post, rim run. Obviously, he's a little bit of a push shot, something that Zubac doesn't have, and I think he's probably a little bit better of a passer too. But I don't know. I'm just not seeing that defensive footprint right now, so that's why I didn't have him as high as you. But I can definitely understand where you're coming from. Did we say who had the 10th pick? Oh yeah, so the Phoenix Suns had the 10th pick. They selected Jalen Smith, another guy we may talk about.
I don't think so, but maybe.
I didn't have him on my board. But I mean, I could see reason for talking just because of the shooting at that size.
I do like him a lot, but he was not on my board.
Okay, cool. So at 11, that was the Devin Vassell pick by San Antonio Spurs. If it were up to us in our redraft, I would have selected Deni Avdija. Honestly, man, spicy take. Outside of Tyrese Haliburton and LaMelo Ball, Deni Avdija has a chance of being the best passer that we've talked about so far. Like, he's just a ridiculously good passer for that player archetype. Like, usually like that, like we said, like this is my favorite archetype of player, right? The defensive first, no shooting forward. Like, usually that player is just like someone more like, oh man, this guy's got a little bit more passing chops than I thought. Like, no, this guy, Deni Avdija, is throwing lobs. He's hitting skip passes. I love his passing. He's a very big, strong body. He can kind of handle the Giannis's of the world, handle like wings, forwards. He's not very good against like Jalen Brunson types. Those guys will kind of give him the business. Brunson gives everybody the business these days. The shooting is coming along. Okay, it's low volume. Last time I checked, it was like 3 attempts, like 38%. The form looks a lot better.
This is his best year, I think, shooting wise.
Yeah,
right?
And he's just like such a tenacious driver. Like, he's so aggressive, so strong. I don't know. I like Avdija. I like his ability to I feel like he can be like Aaron Gordon in a playoff series where like just because he's a non-shooter, he'll use physicality and strength and passing and defense to keep himself on the floor. So that's kind of why I'm there with him at 11. Did you have him on your board?
I did not.
Okay.
And it's not, some of these other guys, like I said, I was chucking darts.
Yeah.
Shout out Chucking Darts, who is an actual
Love that guy.
He's awesome. If you want actual draft stuff, go check him out, not us, because, we're once they're in the NBA, he's before they're in the NBA. And while they're in the NBA, but definitely go. I'll leave a link to his stuff in the description, just because I said chucking darts. I don't want to, copy his whole flow. He should come on the pod sometime. Around the next draft. I think we could probably make that happen. But So that
we need
leaves
him and Chip Jones. We need to get Chip Jones on the pod. Oh, I love Chip Jones.
We would be lucky if we can get Chip Jones. That dude
we can get Chip. You know, me and Chip spent a whole day together. Like we had like a hangout, like in Chicago. He picked me up. It was really funny because he knew I was in the city. He's from Chicago, huge Bulls guy. He picked me up, took me to like this obscure sandwich place where they serve you your pop in like a jar,
like a mason jar.
Yeah, mason jar, and it was like one of the best sandwiches I've ever had. Had tipped to him, and then we sat at the combine and we just like talked like for hours, and I just asked him like about X prospect, and he gave me like, I don't know, like 3,000 words off rip, no prep, like, oh, this guy can do this and that. If you send him left and then make him spin to right, you'll catch a spin move 6 times out of 10. But yeah, he's awesome, very smart guy. Chip, Chuck, follow them.
He's probably like, I mean, I don't make like a definitive rankings of this, but he's one of the smartest people I know when it comes to basketball. I got to hang out with him at Summer League, and that dude is, if you ever get the chance to talk to him about basketball, take up that opportunity, because goodness gracious, that guy is just like a bottomless pit of basketball knowledge. So we'll also shout him out in the description if you want to check out his stuff. What pick are we on? 11? Yeah.
So I just selected 11, the Deni Avdija. So you're at 12. So you have 2 more picks left. I have 1 more.
So I might shock you a little bit with this one. I don't know if you had him on.
I don't know if you can shock me, man. Could you shock me at this point?
Would Isaiah Joe shock you?
No, dude. I was gonna pick him next.
Oh, dude, yes, let's go.
I was gonna pick him next for sure.
Beat you to it, Matt. So the sales pitch on Isaiah Joe, for those who are uninitiated, currently is and will continue to be one of the best shooters on the planet. His entire career is going to be like 45% 3-point shooter on like significant volume. He's not starting now, but I see a world where Isaiah Joe ends up being a starter. That would not surprise me one bit. Not only is he an amazing 3-point shooter, more specifically about that 3-point shooter being that good of a 3-point shooter is the fact that I don't think people realize right now that a lot of what Isaiah Joe is doing off catch and shoots, it's not just like corner threes, like, he's right on the perimeter. These 3-point shots that he's taking are like far off the 3-point line. He's not just a catch and shoot threat. He's a deep catch and shoot threat. And the spacing implications that has is insane. Like being able to pull defenders as far out as Isaiah Joe forces defenses to, especially in the context of OKC, that's super valuable. A guy like Shea having that spacing next to him. And I looked this up recently. I don't know what the numbers are now, but when he's on the floor with when Shea is on the floor with Isaiah Joe averages like 16 points per 75 possessions on like 56% shooting from the field and like 46% shooting from 3. It's ridiculous. He's more than just like the 9-point per game guy that the stats indicate. This guy has also made major strides as an overall offensive player. It's not like he's just shooting threes and can't like attack closeouts. He's become very good at attacking closeouts. And something that I really like that he's shown this year is he's a 42% mid-range shooter. That's around league average. It's limited volume, so it's not hurting you, but he is starting to kind of get that KCP aspect to him, where KCP makes a lot of money because he gets defenders to bite on pump fakes, and yeah, he could drive to the rim where the defense is waiting for him because they know he's attacking the closeout. That help defense is going to come. Or he can dribble into a one dribble pull up in the mid range and bam, like that's going to alter a defense itself. And Isaiah Joe, that's something that he started to add this year, and I really hope he continues to flesh out that aspect of his game. On ball, there's only so much he's going to be able to do, but he's shooting 83% at the rim, and I think that's ridiculous as it is, but I think the reason it's that high is because he's also an insanely good cutter. So a lot of the stuff that he's getting at the rim is just wide open dunks because his cutting is really, really, really good. Obviously, he benefits from the players that he has around him. So his cuts are probably a lot easier than some guys have to work for their cuts. But yeah, there's not just as far as complementary players, if you're picking 11th or 12th in the draft, this is about as good as you can do. And defensively, you know, he's made strides. I'm not going to say he's like an elite defender, but he's a solid defender.
Another thing I want to say two things. One is tactical wrinkle. Second, fun statistic. Tactical wrinkle. Another thing Isaiah Joe does, the ghost screen, where the screener runs, like sprints at the ball handler, okay, and instead of setting an actual screen, kind of just pops out, and depending on how the defense defends it, ball handler may throw the ball to that screener, ghost screener, and they'll be expected to shoot or attack the closeout or whatever. And Isaiah Joe is just so good at like running at top speed, flying off that the ghost screen action, catching, hitting that shot. Just a very, very effective, versatile shooter. Now the fun stat. Isaiah Joe, per 100 possessions this season, when he's on the floor, the OKC Thunder are a plus 11.2. If a team played at a plus 11.2 net rating for an entire season, they would win 69 games in an 82-game season.
Nice.
Do you know? So that's sixth in the NBA. Okay. Do you know who is seventh in the NBA in plus minus per 100 possessions based on Basketball Reference? Seventh in the NBA. He's a very, very popular player.
Let's hear it.
Nikola Jokic. Do you know who's eighth?
Isaiah Joe.
No, Joe's sixth.
Oh, Joe's sixth? Wow.
Yeah. Jokic is seventh. And then eighth is Kawhi Leonard. Isn't that kind of funny? Obviously,
that's wild.
We're not making this argument. We're not making the...
Right. He's not...
Is Isaiah Joe better than Nikola Jokic? Maybe that guy, what's his name? The ball don't stop guy. He'd probably try to... If Isaiah Joe's agent like came to him and gave him like $1,000, he'd probably make a little video. Yeah, Jokic is not a ball getter. I love it. All his videos are the same thing. He has no bag. This guy has a bag. In today's matchup heavy NBA, you know, you can't use your bag anymore. They took it away from you. But in 1942, Jamal Crawford would be the best basketball player ever.
Yeah, which, I mean, in 1942, yeah, Jamal Crawford probably would be the best basketball player ever.
He would.
But besides the point.
That was the so you had 12. I'm so glad we're on the same wavelength with that. But that was the Sacramento Kings Tyrese Haliburton pick. So you would have picked Isaiah Joe 12. He was actually selected, I think he's in the 40s. Yeah, 49.
46, 49?
Yeah,
he was the biggest jumper by far on this list.
Oh, yeah.
Sixers gave him up for nothing.
So if you're going to take Isaiah Joe... So yeah, Joe was 13th on my board. Yeah, sorry, Dan. I just caught that. Poor Dan. He's dude. Should I just tell you like the two guys? Because this is my last pick. Can I just tell you like the two guys I've been debating here?
Yes, I want to hear it.
So I have Pat Williams, and Cole Anthony.
Okay, those are the last two players I have as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude. I love you, man. I know I tell you this every podcast, but I just love you so much.
We're on the same wavelength. We know the drill. So
I'm gonna go Pat Williams just because he's a bigger body. His drive game still leaves a lot to be desired. He's a really, really good spot up shooter. The problem is it takes him a long time to get that shot up. Yeah, he's just such a big, strong body. I trust that size a little bit more, especially because he's such a good spot up shooter. Like you do have to close out on him. You can't do the whole like disregard him thing. He's improving. He's growing, and I love this little wrinkle he's adding with this one-handed floater shot. Just because he's got such a big hand, he's like, why don't I just take no, it's not even a floater. It's like a mid-range jumper, but he just uses one hand, so it looks like a floater. But it's not as off balance as like a regular floater. I don't know. I like him. I love Cole Anthony too. They're like right neck and neck. I think it just depends on team context, but I'll just take that size because size matters in the NBA.
Right. Nowhere else.
By the way, before you, yeah. Oh yeah, nowhere else.
Right. Sorry, you teed me up.
Yeah, so Pat Williams was selected 4th by the Chicago Bulls. In this redraft, he'd be getting selected 13th by the New Orleans Pelicans.
Was that the last pick of the Garpax era?
I don't know. Probably not.
I feel like that happened.
You're the faster typer.
That probably happened before.
I feel like you should be in charge of check because you do like this Zoom thing where it's like I feel like and it's like oh yep. So Onyeka Okongwu actually averaged 19 points per game when he was 13.
Well, Gar Forman was relieved of his general manager duties April 13th, 2020. So that would have been before the draft.
Yeah, it was.
So this was the first.
They relieved him like a month after the pandemic started.
It's a cold world.
That is the saddest thing I've ever heard. Jesus Christ, we thought we were gonna die.
Yeah, that's a rough way to start the pandemic.
It's like, hey, like we know, like there's a shot, like the world might end and stuff, and this doesn't really matter. But just in case it does, you're gone. Sorry, dude.
So, I guess we're at the 14th pick now.
Yeah.
So, 14th pick for me, I had Cole Anthony. There are some other players that I think you could have over him. But I think he's the perfect sixth man. I would be shocked if Cole Anthony goes his entire career and does not win a Sixth Man of the Year award. I think he's just that kind of guy who's like tailored perfectly to do that. The shot making it's nothing to write home about. But the nice thing about him is that like his role expects him to go in there and shoot the ball. Like he goes onto the floor and they're like, cook, you're a microwave, go out there and cook. His finishing improvement is something I like a lot from him. He's up to 59%, which isn't like, I'm not writing home about 59% at the rim, but if you look at previous seasons of his career, he's come a long way. So I think it's important, especially for like a microwave scorer like that, being able to score from different areas of the floor, apply rim pressure, and get those shots to fall. Definitely something that's going to help him out a lot. You know what you're getting from him. And I also just think, we talked a lot about the basketball stuff, on-court stuff. Cole Anthony seems to me just like he's a good vibe. Like I know Cole Anthony's probably a good hang. And there's something to be said for that. I think he's a guy who towards the 30s of his career is going to be like viewed as a great locker room presence. And even though he's not like a leader in the sense of he's the number one option or the number two option, I feel like he kind of fills somewhat of a leadership role of like, I'm going to keep morale high. And do whatever I can to make sure that we're getting the most out of everybody on the team. I like that about him. I think he's just a fun player, and you're not going to have a bad time watching Cole Anthony play basketball. It's just fun.
Does he give you like a little bit of like Jalen Brunson light vibes, just with how crafty he is, how tough he is? Especially on defense, like he's like, I don't care that I'm like 6'2", 6'3". Like I will fight through the screen. I will swipe down on big men. Mm-hmm. I think his shooting percentages are hurt a little bit just because the type of because he's basically mostly taking like pull up shots, like tough like floater shots. He's like an insanely good free throw shooter. He's always like high 80s for his career, so I trust him as a shooter.
Oh yeah,
and he's not like a negative guard defender either. He's like he's a positive to me, honestly, especially Orlando with all like the screen navigating they ask him to do, and he's like, no problem, bro. I got it. So some guys I had, just feel free to chime in if I'm missing a couple like we didn't get to talk about, but right on the fringes, had Aaron Nesmith, Najee Marshall, Isaac Okoro, Paul Reed.
Isaac Okoro was a fringe for me.
Yeah. Nick Richards maybe. Pritchard,
I will say he has improved. I did not. So I watched. He's one of the players I watched in college, just by nature of being adjacent to Kentucky.
Yeah.
I did not expect him to be a whole lot, but he's surprised me.
Yeah, I hate when we talk about college, especially after what happened.
Oh yeah, it just reminds you that I kept that secret from you for so long.
Did I say Trey Jones? Honorable mention.
He was an honorable. I don't think you did, but he was an honorable mention for me as well. Let me throw an honorable mention out there for you. Paul Reed.
I said Paul Reed.
You did? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He was one that I was like, I would not have him as a lottery pick because the competition was way too high.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he went literally third to last in the draft, it's like, hey man, good on you. You've carved out a great career for yourself.
Yeah.
Let me see. Just because he's a Louisville guy, I'll shout out Jordan Nwora.
Yep.
I didn't really expect him to be much in the NBA because of how he played in college.
Xavier Tillman. I actually ran into him recently at an MSU practice. He's dude, I'm not joking. Like, if LeBron James ran into him in a back alley, see you, LeBron. Like, he's huge, man. His legs, massive.
I was thinking about having him on the cusp, but then I looked at the shooting.
He's had a bad year.
Oh, it's been bad. But also he's just not one dimensional and we say one dimensional and sometimes it has to do with scoring, but with him, it's you kind of just know what you're getting and it's not, you can find other players like that.
I was thinking about it the other day. The problem with Tillman's what archetype would you even put him in? I wouldn't call him a rim runner. I wouldn't call him a switch big. Wouldn't call him a drop big. He's not some DHO hub. He just kind of exists, Yeah,
he's an innings eater. He's an innings eater big for me.
Yeah.
So let's go through. I want to hear your list, just start to finish. Since we kind of alternated and pulled from the pool without being able to go back at guys. Let's hear your full list.
All right, and then we'll end with what the official list was.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. My list. First I went Anthony Edwards, then Haliburton, Ball, Quickly, Bane. That's 5. Maxey at 6. McDaniels at 7. Devin Vassell at 8. Josh Green at 9. I had Deni Avdija at 10. Patrick Williams at 11. Cole Anthony at 12. Isaiah Joe at 13. And then Aaron Nesmith at 14. He was just right there.
All right. So at number 1, I had Anthony Edwards. Number 2, I had Tyrese Haliburton. Number 3, I had LaMelo Ball. Number 4, I had Tyrese Maxey. Number 5, I had Desmond Bane. Number 6, I had Devin Vassell. 7, I had Emmanuel Quickly. 8, I had Jaden McDaniels. 9, Onyeka Okongwu. 10, Isaiah Joe. 11, Cole Anthony. 13 or 12, Patrick Williams. 13, I actually had Aaron Nesmith. And 14, I had Isaac Okoro.
I like that. I like that a lot. So the official list was, let me try to see if I could do this by memory because I didn't write it down. Probably should have.
I didn't either.
So Edwards at 1, Haliburton at 2, Ball at 3, Maxey, much to my chagrin, at 4, Quickly at 5, Bane at 6, McDaniels at 7, Vassell at 8, Josh Green at 9, Onyeka Okongwu at 10, Deni Avdija at 11, Isaiah Joe at 12, Patrick Williams at 13, and Cole Anthony at 14.
That sounds right to me.
Yeah, I got that. You see,
yeah,
I
that
did
was
that.
good. You didn't
That's
write
pretty
it
good,
down,
right?
did you?
No, I swear to God, dude.
Okay, I didn't either. So I was like, it sounded right. I thought that was pretty much 100%.
That was,
cool. I mean, honestly, our lists were the only thing that was different is I didn't have Deni Avdija on my list. He was probably right outside for me. Aaron Nesmith, he was one of my kind of whims and prayers because I think he's had a super underrated season and has improved.
He's shooting the shit out of the ball.
Oh, dude, he will have a long career in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up. Unless you have anything else, I think it's going to wrap it up for the episode. Guys, if you enjoyed this episode, we really hope you leave 5 stars. I looked recently. We have a good amount of 5-star reviews, which really means a lot. So thank you guys for the support. Like we said, we had the best performing episode of the show so far, and that's been cool to see. It means the world to us. So we're going to keep doing our thing. Once again, if you listen this long and you got some questions, might as well leave them below. We may or may not read them on the next episode. Yeah, we'll read them on the next episode. I think that'd be a fun little segment to start doing. If you watch to the end, leave a comment, question, and we'll read it. But yeah, follow us on Twitter at AlexHoops _ at Matt Issa 15. That's Matt with 1 T. and Issa with 2 S's, ISSA 15. But yeah, we'll see you all in the next one.